systems. So what can we do? What can survivors or people who find themselves in situations of abuse in their relationships, be it sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, financial abuse, verbal abuse, what practical help is available to such individuals from a support system point of view? And I'll ask this question in different ways to our remaining panelists. Thank you. Over to you.
All right, so this is why we have counseling and therapies. Whoever is going through a form of abuse or is traumatized as a result of abuse, they need to come forward and assess the closest counseling they can get, the closest therapy they can get to, and also surround themselves with support systems, like you said. So for me, I'm work in progress also in regarding some aspect of my life, and one of the major things that is helping me is therapy, and also amazing support systems. I have I have my sisters, a few of my sisters that are there for me when I feel some certain way. I reach out to them, and they get to sort of rub some grace of comfort on me, and I feel better. And I realize also that when I go in for therapy and I come out, I feel a lot better. It helps me emotionally, it helps me psychologically, it helps me physiologically. So I think people need to feel free to step out and seek for therapy. People need to come out from, whatever shelf they are, and not be ashamed. Nobody's going to judge you. Nobody's going to condemn you. Step out for help. Get counseling. Get therapy. And be sure that somebody's holding your hand while you walk through this journey of recovery and becoming a better person. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Yemi. We are in a society where, or we're in a world, let me put it that way, we're in a world where there is stigma, there are still stigma issues attached to people who go through this kind of abuse. You hear a woman who probably is on the receiving end of physical abuse shares that information, and the first thing and the first response she gets is, oh, it must be something that you did. So we are in a society where we have to deal with that stigma. We are in a society where we have to deal with there's this I call it false strength due to the pressure to remain motivated. And these are some of the things that may stop us from accessing the kind of help that we need, in times of, in situations such as trauma and abuse. We have faith issues. There are things attached to faith. I mean, Mr. Matthews has spoken extensively about how behavior that is repeated over and over, we now attribute it to spiritual issues. Meanwhile, it's just some human being who is repeating the behavior that they have been used to, or they have seen time and time again in their lives. So I think in addressing these issues and knowing what they are, it will help us to be able to access the help that we need for whatever situation, be it recovering from getting out of an abusive situation or recovering from trauma. Shazmi, can we have practical steps to how we can heal, how we can get better, how we can access help from an abusive situation, or to heal from trauma, or to move on from trauma?
Beautiful. So the first and the quickest thing that I would teach anyone, and I teach my clients, is first awareness. So, you want to be able to be aware of where you emotionally live, where's your emotional home. So before you come for any sort of therapy, you're used to being emotionally hurt all the time, emotionally sad. Like they say, we have a dirt road to happiness and a highway to sadness. It's always easier to feel sad than to feel happy. We're used to those emotions. We live in them a lot easier. Movies trigger it. We just tend to live there. So the first thing I tell people is, first be aware. Where do you emotionally live? Where, when anything triggers you, where do you move? Is it to anger? Is it to sadness? Is it to helplessness? Because we practice learned helplessness very well. We forget that we can actually practice being more helpful with who we are and ourselves better. So the first thing I tell people is be aware. The second thing I would say is look at where you live. What is your state? So state, I would say, comes into a triad. So it's a triangle. And this is how it works. The first thing you want to be aware of is, what is your physiology? So when you feel upset, when you feel sad, when you feel helpless, normally your body posture is the first thing you can notice. Are your shoulders down? Is your head down? Are you breathing shallow? Do you feel helpless and sad? So the first thing I would tell people is change your posture immediately, change your physiology. So stand up straight, put your shoulders back, put your head up, and then watch what you're saying to yourself. So where's your focus going? Is your focus on what's not working, or is your focus on what is working? So now change your physiology, change your focus to what is working for you in life. Where do you want to go? And then I would say, watch the language you say to yourself, because language is key. We don't realize we actually abuse ourselves more than we even
Beautiful
credit
music.
hurt
Wow.
us. So watch your language. What are you saying to yourself when you're upset? Are you beating yourself up? Are you putting yourself down? So be very aware of three things: your physiology, where's your focus going, and your language, because these three create your state. So that's the first thing to be able to do after you're aware. The other thing I tell a lot of clients is, when you feel you're moving into a pattern of feeling sad or feeling helpless, you want to be able to break that pattern immediately. The best thing to do to pick up your state is put on some music. Put on a song, put your earbuds on, and just dance for a minute, as silly as it sounds. But if you're sitting, you want to stand up. If you're lying down, you want to sit up. You want to literally shift your body in that moment. And I would say dance. So feel great, because there's no way that when you're moving and your body's feeling, a sense of happiness, that you'd immediately move to sadness. The other thing I would also say is gratitude. Like, I teach people gratitude, and there are two steps to it, which is not to just list what you're grateful for, but to think about, what are you grateful for and why? Because you move a step deeper into why you're feeling grateful. I tell a lot of people, write down 6 things when you wake up in the morning, and physically write it. Don't think it. So you put some kinesthetic energy down and you say, I'm grateful for my health. Why? Because I can actually get out of bed today. I have a beautiful day ahead of me. So write 6 things down, and then 6 things down at the end of the day that you were grateful for that happened to you during the day, because it is so easy to see what went wrong, but it's harder to look for what went right. And when you're in a state of gratitude, gratitude and anger cannot reside at the same time. Gratitude and pain cannot reside at the same time. So that's the third thing I would say, is move into a state of gratitude. And from gratitude now, be able to assess the situation you're in. The fourth step I would leave you with is, put your hand on your heart. And the ECG machine shows that the brain waves work at a certain level. They have a different rhythm, and the heart waves have a different rhythm. But when you physically put your hand on your heart and you breathe into your heart, you align the brain waves and the heart waves to now be at one. So they're actually moving together. And they say that if you're ever in a lost state, a confused state, a sad state, or you're living in your head, because you know, you live in your head, you're dead. So you want to always be able to make decisions from your heart. So to move from your head, put your hand on your heart and breathe in for 3 minutes. And then be able to make a decision about your day, your mood, or anything you're going through from this state. Because I would say anybody that I've ever worked with, the decisions that they'll make from their head prior to this exercise, and when they move into the heart never lies, because it's at one with the brain now. So the heart actually takes over and changes the state of who you are. And now when you ask yourself the same question that you previously answered from your head, you answer from a place of truth. You answer from a place of who you actually are. So those would be the four things I would leave you with. And if I have room for one more, I would tell anybody listening to journal. It's one of the most powerful tools you can use is journaling. Even if it's, I don't know what to write today. Today was a random day. I woke up, the sun was out, but you'd be surprised when you take clutter out from here and you put it down and you make room for new fresh ideas to come. It is one of the most powerful tools I've practiced, my son practices, my clients practice. Something else I teach people is, if you feel you've had a very rough day or you're revisiting trauma, something you've been through, write it down and then have a ceremony on burning it. Because I always say you don't want to leave that energy floating around in your journal, because you got to remember that's energy you're still attracting and inviting into the environment. You're leaving it out there. So I would say write it down and have a beautiful ceremony where you light a candle and you're able to literally let go and burn what you wrote down, and then just heal, breathe, and let that moment go. But don't keep that toxic writing and nature and environment stuck in one stagnant place. So those are 5 things I'd leave you with very quickly.
I hope we're all taking notes. I hope we're all taking notes. So we have, okay, 1 minute, Mr. Shegun Matthews, it's all yours.
Okay.
Practical steps to dealing with, to helping us out of a place of abuse and trauma.
I think Chasmi, she's giving us enough that we can work with. Maybe I should just add one or two. I think exercises are good. Exercises, especially walking exercise. If you are, because a lot of people struggle with all kind of quite intensive exercise, but I think most of us, we can easily do walking. And some people will say, I walk to my work. Walking to work, that stress is stress. That releases cortisols. It releases cortisols. It releases adrenaline. It releases, which other one? It releases cortisol especially. But when you intentionally go out to work as an exercise, it releases sweet hormones like epinephrine. It releases dopamine. It releases good enough serotonin. So walking to work and walking as an exercise is quite two different things. One is the brain recognizes one as stress, so it releases stress hormone. The other one, the brain recognizes it as pleasure, so it releases pleasure hormone. So I will suggest exercise. And there's this thing that Chasmi mentioned, but I want to put it in another way. I think we should do a lot of mindfulness when we are going through this emotion. See, there's a lot of people. I have some clients that they feel when they are feeling bad, remembering a past experience, and they now feel bad for feeling bad. So sometimes it's just okay for you to feel bad, because the body, your emotion is telling you this thing that happens to you is not good, is not pleasant. So sometimes it's just for you to be mindful, and then, like she said, identify, why am I feeling like this? What are the thoughts that are stimulating this feeling? And then you process and analyze it. What it does is that it diffuses the power in that emotion. It reduces the strength of that trauma. It relieves. It may not take it away totally, but it releases the intensity, the stress that are associated with that trauma. And also, please, I would suggest that when you're feeling that, avoid alcohol and drugs. Alcohol and drugs, what they do is that they make the matter worse, because they give you temporary release and they make the matter worse after you've come back to your senses. And then please don't isolate yourself. Don't isolate yourself. Being in isolation, it makes you to internalize a lot of things, especially temperament come into play when this happens. Because this is one thing you should do when you are feeling down, as a consequence of the past experience. A lot of the time, I remember when I went to the isolation center, this COVID isolation center, and there was one thing that a lot of the clinicians that were there said, and that is because I told them, I said, the reason why we've come to you is to help you ventilate. You should if you expose yourself to opportunity to ventilate. What happens with those traumatic experiences that you have oxygenated? That means you have taken a lot in. So when you don't ventilate or exhale the pressure inside you, what you tend to do is that those things you have taken in, they become toxic inside you. So it's good for you to ventilate, speak to people that will make you happy, speak to people that will make you feel good. Speak to people, especially speak to experts, people that will understand and that can give you strategies and techniques that you will use to recover from those traumatic experiences. Another thing is that it's always good for individual to volunteer to see. This thing is one of the things that has given me the biggest joy, because there's something that comes from altruism. When you go do things, you go to volunteer, you go do things for free, you go do things, because what it does is that it lifts your self-esteem. Because especially when you start hearing the feedback and stuff like that, and it does make you to identify some values. Because one thing about low self-esteem is that you devalue yourself. So when you volunteer, you do things in altruism, and people are telling you how well you have done, how well you have helped them. It helps increase your personal value, the value you put on yourself, the worth you put on yourself. So it's good to volunteer. And it's also good to connect with friends and make new friends. Hold friends and making new friends. Making friends is quite very good. It helps you. It helps you because it helps you. And also, Yemi Oludele have said something. Seek help. Ask for help. Ask for support. See expert that will help you. And two other things is, I will also suggest that you eat well. When you eat well, they impart on the regulation of hormones and chemicals that goes to your mind. It helps to send a proportionate amount of neurotransmitter all over between your spine and all your senses. Eat well, eat balanced diet, sleep well. And I have one more I can add. I just remember that as much as possible, if it's within your control, reduce some stress. Because what stress does to you is that, for example, from late last year to early this year, there are some people that are very significant to my life that have benefited in some way. But I realized that the benefit comes with a lot of stress, and I cut off. See, there are some things that if they are within your control, because what tends to happen is that the accumulation of stress, you go in different areas, they can have a way they trigger your trauma. They can have a way, because sometimes when you just imagine, anytime you have overworked yourself, you have exhausted yourself, you are burnt out. There's a way you become irritable, you become cranky, you become agitated, you become confused and disorientated. And this affects how you even relate with your family. So a lot of the time, and this is a accumulation of stress. There was this woman, I'm even seeing her tomorrow. There was this woman I see around my area, around where I stay, and she was having suicidal thoughts, and she didn't realize. And by the time we analyze her life, we realize that she's doing so much. She's a teacher, she does things, she takes care of her children, she doesn't have a help, she does all those kind of things, and she didn't realize that the stress from all of those things were the ones that were causing those anxiety that lead to suicidal thoughts. And one of the strategies was she started taking decisions. She starts seeking up for help. She starts taking her mind off some things that if the house is not this again. So sometimes she just has to reduce those stress, because stress, they are triggers. They are stressors. We call trigger stressors. They stress our mind. They stress our strength. They impart on which hormones are released. Sometimes they release excessive hormones, stress hormones, and this become toxic into our body. So I think those few tips can help anybody, and I pray that afterwards we all become better from now. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Shazmin Bank. Thank you, Shegun Matthews. Thank you, Yemi Oludele Dari. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for informing. Thank you for educating us today. I think we will agree that it has been indeed a very inspiring, educating, and very informative 2 hours we've had today on dealing with trauma and abuse, not only in our personal lives, but also in our relationships. So thank you so much for the time you have spent with us. I think just finally, Mary Nwosu, thank you. And then there's Samitha Oko, and I think that's about it. But thank you. I'm going to hand over to Aderunke now, who is our host. Yes, Shazmin.
Because I realized there was so many beautiful women in the group, and just one thing I just wanted to be able to say would be, you know, sometimes women, you know, we don't value ourselves enough, and one of the things I tell a lot of my clients to do is put your favorite music on, pick your best red lipstick, and write smack in the middle of your mirror, "I am enough." And every single day when you are brushing or you are getting ready, you repeat to yourself, "I am enough," and you believe it, and begin your day with that. I just wanted to leave that for women, because I just think as women, we can be so hard on ourselves.
You know, thank you. There was a question that kept playing in my mind, and Aderunke might, have an idea about it. But you talk about women, and I was tempted to ask, is there a gender to trauma and abuse? Because I'm looking at our platform and we've got more women here, and it's something Aderunke and I has been going back and forth about that is there a gender to trauma and abuse? But that's another topic for another day. So we'll leave that. But thank you so much. So ladies, the most beautiful color of lipstick that you want, and then you're right, we are enough. And I think also for men, we are enough as individuals. We are enough. We can only do to improve ourselves so we can give the best of ourselves to the world that we live in. Aderunke, I'm going to hand over to you, my darling host. It's all yours.
Wow. Thank you, Sister Jem. I really appreciate